The Pats are red hot, and Cleveland is coming off a big win against the Miami Dolphins. He's Spencer German. I'm Nick Cattles, and this is a crossover edition of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Browns.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's happening? I'm your host of Locked On Patriots, Nick Cattles, and today I'm joined by the host of Locked On Browns, my guy Spencer German, for the latest edition of our Locked On crossovers during this 2025 NFL season. And on today's crossover episode, Spencer and I will give you the keys to victory for each team, and we'll also break down the marquee matchups that will be worth your time to keep an eye on. But first, let's talk some big stories. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. Locked On Patriots podcast, Locked On Browns podcast are proud partners with the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And don't forget, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that thumbs up. Give us a like, throw a comment in, and subscribe. We will both appreciate that. And today's Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Well, Spencer, the Browns got a blowout win against the Dolphins last week, which begs the question, what is the biggest storyline for this football team heading into Sunday at Gillette?
Yeah, a week ago, the biggest storyline certainly centered around Kevin Stefanski and him being sort of on the hot seat here. And when you were going up against a Miami team that has been dealing with those conversations since the summer, I think he kind of put that on the back burner for now. But what's interesting about this matchup for me in relation to Stefanski is the guy obviously manning the other sideline and Mike Vrabel, who we know was in this very building here in Cleveland last year as kind of a consultant. By the end of the season, things are going so poorly with their offensive line and Andy Dickerson, who was their offensive line coach, that Mike Vrabel was actually coaching the offensive line for this team. And so there was chatter like I think that it's a lot more prevalent now within the Browns fan base that people are sort of growing tired of Kevin Stefanski, if you will. But last year, there were some people that felt that way. And there was a lot of people who felt, don't let Mike Vrabel leave. Like, don't let him leave this building. Like, make him an offer to stay, get rid of Stefanski, make him the head coach. I'm not saying that was like a prominent topic, but it was something that some people talked about. And so the idea that now a year later, he's the coach of the Patriots, Kevin Stefanski's still here. He knows probably a little bit of the trade secrets that are kind of going on in the way that Kevin wants to do things, but that the coach that was in this very building that a lot of people have a lot of respect and admiration for, and now he's with New England, I think that is the thing that people are going to be monitoring closely, because if the Patriots blow out the Browns on Sunday and it feels like Kevin Stefanski gets, circles coached around him by Vrabel, that conversation about the hot seat stuff bubbles right back to the surface going into the bye week after this game against New England.
Yeah, it's a fascinating part of this matchup, Spencer. And of course, we're coming off looking at the Titans-Patriots matchup where Mike Vrabel went back to Tennessee, and now he gets to host the Cleveland Browns. It's kind of funky the way the schedule works out, where it's back-to-back weeks, teams that he worked for. And you do wonder about the intel, especially on the offensive line, as you've mentioned. Mike Vrabel has talked about how he worked with the offensive line in Cleveland. He also talked about working with the front office and Andrew Berry and kind of getting an idea as far as analytics go. So it will be interesting to see if he could gain anything from that experience in Cleveland coming up this weekend on Sunday. I think the biggest storyline for the Patriots is, will Drake Maye and this Patriots offense do enough against what I think is the most talented defense that they have faced up to this point this season? I mean, I'm not taking away anything from the Patriots because, frankly, Spencer, they're ahead of schedule, including Drake Maye, who's been mostly terrific, especially since week one. But you look at the schedule, my man, the Raiders, they're not a great defense. The Dolphins, the Steelers, the Panthers, the Bills, the Saints, the Titans. We walked into this season talking about the Patriots' schedule and how soft it was. And you look at all these defenses they've played through the first 7 weeks. And I watched, this Dolphins-Browns game from last weekend. And I'll tell you, that's the most talented defense that I have prepped for. It's the most talented defense that I have seen this season at all three levels. So I think it's a pretty interesting matchup of whether or not Drake Maye and Josh McDaniels can do some of, most of, all of the type of things we've seen offensively against this Browns defense.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Like I can tell you going into that Dolphins matchup, and it's hard because if you're going back and watching the Dolphins game, the Browns probably looked a lot better than I think they are as an overall team in that game. When you win 31-6, that's going to kind of be what people assume.
Yeah.
But on all, we'll get to the offense. I know coming up when we talk about some key matchups and things. The offense has been a disaster. But one thing I already knew about this team going into that game was that the defense is legit. That's been the case all year. Everybody they've played has relatively struggled against the Browns, except, there was a few instances. Detroit, it kind of got away from them, but they tried to keep it as close as they could for a while. Some turnovers didn't help that cause. Same thing in Baltimore. Kept it as close as they could for a while. Baltimore still had Lamar Jackson at that point. It was week 2 of the season, and he kind of got going in the second half and then lit them up. But it was a close game up until halftime, and that's kind of been the story of the Browns season is the defense keeps things close, and then it's all about if the offense can actually do enough to sort of combat whatever their opponent is kind of throwing at them here. So it's an interesting matchup from that standpoint. A young quarterback in Drake Maye against this really, really good defense. Myles Garrett obviously is a pass rusher coming off the edge. I'm as fascinated as you to sort of see if this momentum that the Patriots have built up can keep going. The one thing I'll say though is as much of a challenge as the Browns defense is, my thought instantly goes to this just being another one of those games where, they might limit Drake Maye and company for a while, but how long can they stay in it if the Browns offense can do next to nothing? And so that I think obviously leads into some other conversations that we're going to have. But I do see where that is, with how the Patriots started the season, I can see why that's a big thing that Patriots fans especially should be watching for.
Yeah, and going against the Browns defense is a multifaceted challenge, and I'm gonna dive deeper into this on the Friday preview episode that I usually do, getting ready for the game and my final thoughts. But again, watching this defense, a lot of people, I'm sure, in New England or just Patriots fans, wherever you are, you think about the Cleveland Browns defense and you think Myles Garrett. And look, Myles Garrett is the real freaking deal, as we know. But I'm telling you right now, this defense is not. I underline, I underscore, I highlight, I put it in bold, I put it all in caps. This Cleveland Browns defense is not just about Myles Garrett. They've got multiple dudes on that side of the football that I think can cause some trouble for the Patriots offense and offensive line. So again, I'll dig into that a little bit deeper later in the week on the Friday episode, but it's going to be an interesting challenge, an interesting matchup between Drake Maye and that defense. Speaking of matchups, every single week, there are matchups that make the difference. Up next, we tell you which matchups this week are appointment television. It's a Locked On Patriots and Browns crossover, and we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Drake Maye's passing yards or Kayshon Boutte catching a touchdown, and you're in the game. You'll love how quick it is. You can make your lineup in under a minute. You'll also love stacks. If you want to ride with a player, you can select their passing yards, rushing yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. It's also fun to follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with one click. And the new injury reboot feature, it's awesome. If your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. The NFL season is here, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues and login screens and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why you should use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price that you actually pay. You pull up Game Time in just a couple taps, you see amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games for as low as $100. And the app makes it super simple. You can even see the exact view from the seat before you buy. And you love zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, in case you forgot the names from the first segment, he's Spencer German, I am Nick Cattles, Locked On Browns, Locked On Patriots, respectively, doing this crossover edition of the pod this week, getting you ready for Week 8, Browns, Patriots at Gillette Stadium. And every week, Spencer, matchups can win games. They can, of course, lose games. And there are some fascinating ones coming up on Sunday. I'll let you take the lead here. What's the first marquee matchup that you look at between Pats and Browns?
Yeah, listen, I think I have to start with the guy that you mentioned at the end of the first segment in Myles Garrett, because anytime he's on the field, we know that the game plan sort of starts around him, and in terms of what the opponent's going to try to do to limit him, the different things they're going to throw at him. And you have a matchup this week that's going to be pretty interesting. Now, listen, I'll say this. Like, we talked about the Browns defense first segment as well as a whole. Jim Schwartz this past week did a lot of unique things with the way he deployed Myles and the way he deployed some other people. He blitzed a lot more than he normally does this past week against Miami. He ran more zone than he's ever run as the defensive coordinator here in Cleveland. So along the lines of playing like a young quarterback, I wonder, Myles has generally fared pretty well against, rookie offensive linemen, rookie tackles, and he's got one lining up in front of him in Will Campbell this week. So I think that is instantly like the number one matchup you're looking at, because if Myles has his way with Will Campbell, which I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. I think Will Campbell's proven he's a pretty solid tackle already in this league. He's gotten off to a really good start to his career. But if Myles can sort of, use some of his veteran savviness against him and make some plays to disrupt this game, it absolutely could change the outcome in favor of the Browns. Now, Patriots will probably help Will Campbell out. They'll probably chip a lot. Myles has seen just about everything in this league. He's seen triple team blocks at times. So I'm sure they're not going to just leave him on an island. But that is obviously the first place my mind goes, is how does Myles fare against a rookie tackle who's, still sort of getting his feet wet in the NFL just 7 games into this thing.
I'm with you, my man. That's my first marquee matchup. It's kind of low hanging fruit, right? But I did notice in that Dolphins game, Myles Garrett not exclusively lined up against the left tackle. Yeah. He'll move around a little bit. So you also have to look at Morgan Moses, who's been really good this year for the most part. I thought Morgan Moses was the best offensive lineman on the field on Sunday against Tennessee, and I don't think it was relatively close. So I do wonder how much Schwartz will look at Myles Garrett and say, no, we're going to go Myles Garrett versus Will Campbell. That's what we're doing. Maybe a couple of times we'll sprinkle Myles Garrett over there at Morgan Moses, but why do that? Let's go strength versus maybe what they see as somewhat of a weakness because of the youth of Will Campbell and Jared Wilson on that left side, another rookie. He's had his issues in pass protection as well. And I think for you, as you mentioned, it's going to come down to the pass protection, and I think it's going to come down to the help. And that's tight ends who haven't done a good job in pass protection or run blocking, Hunter Henry or Austin Hooper. Neither guy has been consistent in that neck of the woods at all. And I do think, if you're the Patriots, how much attention do you want to put on Myles Garrett? How much attention do you want to put on the edges? Because as I mentioned in the first segment, I'll mention it again, there are a lot of dudes on this defense and on this defensive line. So I don't know if you want to put all the attention in the world on just Myles Garrett. I'll also bring up this matchup, and it kind of goes perfectly with what we just talked about a second ago. I find that fascinating, and maybe this might bore people, but I don't think it will, Spencer. Hopefully it doesn't bore you because you're my co-host today. But I'm looking at this matchup, and I'm saying, all right, you got Josh McDaniels, who is a very respected, smart, experienced offensive coordinator, going against Jim Schwartz, a very respected, experienced defensive coordinator. You could argue these are two of the very best at what they do in their perspective, sides of the field. And, I just look at this and I say, what do they got coming What are we going to see on Sunday? Josh McDaniels, what is he going to pull out of his bag? What is Jim Schwartz? You mentioned, I watched the game, as I mentioned, against the Dolphins. There was a pretty heavy bag of stuff from Jim Schwartz. What are we going to see on Sunday between these two coordinators? Yeah. I think it could be fun.
I like that you brought this up, and I'll tell you, you wanted to know if I was interested. I'm so interested in this that now I want to look up before Sunday and figure out like how many times a Jim Schwartz coach team has gone against Josh McDaniels and sort of what the record is there. Whether it was when McDaniels was just exclusively with the Patriots as an OC, whether it was when he was been a head coach and maybe Schwartz sort of overlapped there with whatever teams he was coaching. I'm actually fascinated to look this up now. So I will try to go do that before this thing kicks off on Sunday. But that's a really good point. I like sort of the inside baseball, inside football approach to this conversation, where we get a chance to kind of look and say, hey, these are two of the best coaches in terms of what they do on their respective sides of the ball in the business. How do they, how do they sort of handle things? How do they handle each other's schemes, and what do they kind of throw it with the other? I'm definitely interested in that as well. I know I don't want to. The next one I was going to bring up was just Stephon Diggs as a slot receiver, because I know they sort of line him up in different places, but I know from what I've kind of understood from watching the tape, he does line up a lot in the slot for this New England team this year. And I think that's probably the best place for him to be deployed in this matchup specifically, because outside you got Denzel Ward, obviously on the one side, other side you got Tyson Campbell, who's new to Cleveland, but I thought has actually shown he can hang with a lot of guys in man coverage. Part of the reason they traded for him and moved off of Greg Newsome was he's a man guy, plays very physical, and he was playing a lot of zone in Jacksonville, and it was not going well. So I think the outside corner spots Cleveland sort of has pretty well, set up right now. But that slot spot has been sort of a rotating cast of characters. They put safeties there at times. They put Myles Harden there at times. I think that is the place where, if they're going to be able to move the ball downfield vertically or in the passing game, it's going to be Stephon Diggs in that slot spot if they can kind of get him in there doing some different things. So I'm curious to see how McDaniels approaches that with Diggs, and conversely, how Schwartz approaches it from a defensive standpoint.
Yeah, it's a fun matchup because Josh McDaniels loves moving his receivers around. You'll have Diggs on the inside. You'll have Diggs on the outside. You'll have Matt Collins kind of line up as an in blocker and then run routes from that position. You'll have, obviously, Pop Douglas will be thrown in there as well. And then you look at, I'd say Kayshon Boutte and Matt Collins are your primary two outside receivers within this offense. So I don't know how much work those guys will get given the corner situation. I think it's very interesting if Cleveland does play a lot of man, how those two guys handle it. We'll see. We'll see what Cleveland does, and we'll see how Josh McDaniels responds, as we mentioned. And then you wonder if Josh McDaniels will then say to himself, well, now we'll use the running backs and the tight ends more in the pass game than we might have used them in the past few weeks against this specific matchup. I look at the linebackers and the safeties, Spencer, of this Patriots defense against the run game. And I know, Cleveland, obviously, with Dillon Gabriel trying to figure things out with him, and they're going to go off their run game. And Quinshon Judkins, who is somebody who knows Travion Henderson very well, and Travion Henderson knows him very well. Travion Henderson's been off to a very, very slow start, which I talked about on Wednesday's episode of Locked On Patriots.
Is he in the doghouse or something?
No, I don't think he's in the doghouse. He's just off to a slow start. The game is a little bit too quick for him right now. It's kind of speeding up on him as a rookie. And so, it's interesting because you look at Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, both from Ohio State, and Quinshon Judkins is out to a very good start for Cleveland, the opposite of Travion Henderson when there were a lot of expectations. So I just look at this Patriots defense and Robert Spillane, and, you look at Christian Ellis and Jack Gibbons, their linebackers, sometimes Jelani Tavai, how will they defend the run? And then you look at the safeties as well, because I do think Cleveland, not all times, but Cleveland does have an offensive line that can get to that second level. And if they're getting push on that D line, which has been difficult, Patriots defensive line and run defense has been the best part of this football team aside from Drake Maye. But if Cleveland starts to get that push, I saw Miami and I saw defensive backs that couldn't tackle. My God, Jack Jones. God rest to him in his football career. I saw him in New England, and man, watching that game against Cleveland, that was a rough tape for Jack Jones. Can those safeties, cornerbacks, and linebackers, second and third level of defense, come up and rally if they have to to make sure this run game doesn't get out of hand.
Yeah, it's a fair point. The Browns want to establish the run. I think the dynamics between Judkins and Henderson are interesting. Henderson still trying to sort of grasp things at the NFL level. For Quinshon, I think it's kind of out of necessity that the Browns are like, listen, we need to put you out there and play you because their offense just doesn't have a lot of options. They don't have the talent on that side of the ball right now, which is very well documented. So they're kind of relying on a lot of rookies. This entire rookie class is basically contributed in some way at this point, other than Shedeur Sanders, who was the backup quarterback. So, they've just kind of out of necessity needed these guys, and Quinshon's at the forefront of that. I'll say this because I think I'd be remiss if I leave this segment without bringing up Dillon Gabriel in some capacity. This is a game where it's been hard these first 3 starts for him to truly evaluate what do we have here in this guy? Is he going to be something? Is he just going to be a backup for his career? Is there more to his game than maybe we thought? The first game he plays, short week, goes to London, has to sort of get an abnormal sort of training schedule in him to sort of play this game. And that was probably the best game he's played to this point. Then they come back. They're on the road in Pittsburgh. And that game, the offensive line played so poorly. It was really hard to evaluate him at all because he was constantly under duress. And then this past week, the game plan was basically because of the weather. Let's run the football. He only threw 18 passes. He didn't really have to do much. He just ran the offense he was asked to run. This is the first game because I think that Patriots secondary is maybe the thing that's the weakness for them right now. Their run defense is really, really good. They're actually one spot above the Browns in terms of yards allowed per game in terms of stopping the run. I know that about this Patriots team and a Mike Vrabel coach team. They're going to be physical, especially in the two front levels of the defense. So this is the first time I think we're going to get a chance to see, okay, what can Dillon Gabriel do? Can he read these defenses? Can he start pushing the ball downfield a little bit more and make some plays that way? Because that is how other teams I've noticed have started to have some success against New England to this point. So we'll see if this becomes the first matchup that we really get a chance to evaluate Dillon Gabriel, and I'm curious to see what that kind of looks like.
Yeah, the pass defense for the Patriots has not been good, which is surprising to me when you have Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis. I talked about it all off season. Those are two of some of the best corners. Christian Gonzalez, I don't think has knocked the rust off quite yet from the hamstring. He missed the first 3 weeks. I think he's still kind of rounding into form. He missed really all of camp. So, he's not quite there yet. Obviously, second team All-Pro. And Carlton Davis, I think, is one of the best number 2 corners in football when he wants to be, which is the key. So what's interesting about that is whether or not the Patriots will play zone or if they'll start playing more man, because they have played a lot more zone than I think anybody anticipated. So will they change that up this weekend? We'll have to see. All right, 3 keys to victory next as we continue today's crossover episode of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Browns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's talk about Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. And Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every model. Think about some of the details we've seen during this winning streak. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. And here's something really cool, especially for those up in the Northeast: all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, so you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, so some of these crossover episodes have a prediction at the end. I don't believe in it. I don't do it. I wait until Friday to give my prediction.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way.
Yeah, I think it's too early. Locked On bosses, are you listening to us, Ross and others? A little too early. So I go 3 keys. So let's jump off here. He is Spencer German. I am Nick Cattles. Locked On Browns, Locked On Patriots. We're going to give you the 3 keys to victory for each team here. Spencer, what is your top key, your number 1 key to this game?
Number 1 for me, I think, is going to be establishing the run on offense somehow, some way. I think there's only good that can come for this Browns offense when they're able to actually run the football. I think you saw that a little bit this past week against Miami. They obviously had the big touchdown run from Quinshawn, and the second half wasn't great, which, wasn't really all that surprising because that's been the story of the season for them. They go long spurts without being able to do much of anything on offense. But if they can get the run game working successfully in some capacity, where they can sort of stay ahead of the sticks and those types of things, I think that makes everything better, both from a standpoint of like leaning into their identity, but then also freeing Dillon Gabriel up to be able to make some plays on his own as well. So for me, it's not going to be easy, but I think that the Browns have to find a way to get that run game going.
That was my first key as well, is the Patriots need to limit Quinshawn Judkins and continue to do what you've been doing against the run. The Patriots have yet to give up a 50-yard rusher this season, which is kind of bananas.
Wow.
And they've had some good offenses they've played against as far as running the football. James Cook in Buffalo, they stopped him. The combination of Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle in Carolina, they stopped those guys as well. So I think the run defense is the legit part of this defense that I have totally bought in. They've done it each and every week. So keep doing that and put this football game into Dillon Gabriel's hands. My second key is keep taking care of the football. It's so simple and fundamental, but the Patriots, the last time they lost was against Pittsburgh, and they turned the football over 5 times at Gillette. And so that's how they lost that game. If they take care of the football, they don't beat themselves, Spencer, they should have a chance. They should have a pretty good chance of winning this football game, because if you turn the ball over, and we saw this last week between Cleveland and Miami, if you turn the football over to this Cleveland defense, they're going to feast. They can score on those turnovers. And then all of a sudden, an offense that hasn't been consistently moving the ball or scoring points, now you're giving them free points. So make it as hard as possible on Cleveland by slowing down the run, key number 1, and key number 2. Don't give them any extra possessions.
Yeah, it's really a good point. The part of the reason the Browns made the switch to Dillon Gabriel when they did was because I just think Kevin Stefanski sort of ran out of patience for Joe Flacco in terms of not protecting the football. That was costing them so much those first 4 weeks. And as much as I said, I don't know that we've been able to really evaluate Dillon Gabriel all that well through these first 3 starts. The one thing that he does deserve credit for is he has protected the football. There was a couple times this last week where he threw some, or I guess like 2 weeks ago against the Steelers now, where he threw a couple to the defense that probably should have been interceptions, but they weren't. But he has done a better job of just making sure that they're not giving the opponent extra drives, extra possessions. And that's I think, at least helped the cause in terms of how bad this offense is, not put themselves even further behind the 8 ball because they're giving away those turnovers. So that's a good one. I'm going to stick on the offensive side for my next key because I think, and I just mentioned him, but I think this is the game where Dillon Gabriel's going to have to make a play. At least one big play where like he throws it downfield, hooks up with somebody on a big play. They have not been very they have not tried to push the ball down the field. They have not tried to stretch the field at all passing wise. This is going to be the game, I think, because again, I worry about that run game getting going consistently, where he is going to have to sort of step up and make some plays for this team to keep the offense moving in the right direction. So I'm looking at Dillon Gabriel to have one of those moments or a couple of those moments where he maybe converts a big 3rd down to get into the red zone or something like that and set yourself up for some points. Something along those lines that just kind of flips the game a little bit and keeps this offense moving in the right direction.
My third and final key before getting to your third and final key is just get off to a better start, especially defensively. The first quarter defense by the Patriots has not been good. They give up scores constantly. They give up yardage, especially in the passing game. And I would just love to see this defense start well and actually try to build an early lead and put the onus, put the pressure on the Cleveland Browns, because, it feels like the Patriots every week, they're down by a field goal, they're down by a touchdown, or they're at best tied at the end of the first quarter. They need to start better. They need to start faster. And it's something Mike Vrabel has continued to talk about, and they haven't been able to do it yet. So a 3-and-out to start this game would be almost amazing for this Patriots defense if they can actually get that done. What's your final key?
Yeah, I like that one, and kind of off of that for the Browns. I wasn't going to necessarily word it exactly like get off to a faster start, but I do think playing with a lead is something that the Browns have not done much this year. And so if they can find a way to get themselves in front in this game, I think it allows the defense to sort of play more freely, take a few more risks and those types of things. Myles has talked about that a ton, especially after that Steelers game, about how there's just not a threat from their offense. And so teams just kind of lull them to sleep on defense until they can kind of break through. And so they can't really take those risks when it's a tight game or when they're playing from behind. But if they can build a lead, that kind of gives Myles and company a chance to do a few different things. And even Jim Schwartz, like we talked about earlier, to try a few different things. So I think it would free everybody up, both sides of the ball, if they can actually play with a lead in this game, somehow find a way to strike first. I liked that Kevin Stefanski this past week actually took the ball first against Miami. Unfortunately, they went 3 and out, and I was like, I'm not going to lie. They went 3 and out. Dolphins get the ball. They picked up a first down, and I was like, oh boy, like they might actually lose this game. I was not feeling good about it out of the gate, but then they sort of rallied and got it together, and it was all fine. But I like the idea of maybe taking the ball first, trying to sort of show that you're trying to go out and throw the first punch a little bit, especially again against a Mike Vrabel coach team that is going to be very physical back to you. So I think that's kind of where my head's at with the 3 keys for this one for the Browns.
All right, that wraps up this crossover edition of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Browns. Thank you for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer. Don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel, hit that like button, and subscribe. And for your second listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast with Tyler the Madman Rowland and Tony Wiggins. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day. And Spencer German and myself, Nick Cattles, we will see you tomorrow for our final word on this matchup, Sunday, Gillette Stadium, Cleveland Browns at New England Patriots. Until then, be well.